You're looking at a scene at 72 Lawrence Avenue in Watsonville where there has been a murder-suicide. 2 men are dead. The incident began Wednesday evening at 5:30 p.m. and shots were fired at Watsonville police officers who responded to a domestic incident that quickly escalated and spiraled late into the night. Here, investigators are mapping out their strategy and collecting evidence. Sealed out a section of Lawrence Avenue. Several homes off limits here where shots volleyed across the street. It struck a home right here.
Deputy Chief Rudy Escalante, Watsonville Police Department. On behalf of the police department, we are extremely saddened for the family over these tragic events. This is a catastrophic event for the family, and so for that we send them our blessings. We are also grateful for the fact that one of our officers was not injured. This was a severe event that was extremely dynamic in nature, and the fact that an officer was basically risking his life and was not injured, we are extremely grateful for that. The call for service came in at about 5:39 p.m. We were dispatched to a domestic disturbance. It came secondhand. There was a family member who called and said that there was some sort of disturbance, that they had received a phone call from a family member who resides at the residence. We arrived at about 5:44 p.m. During the first call, it was indicated that there were no weapons involved and that it was a disturbance between family members. The first officer to arrive on scene made contact with the suspect. There was conversation that occurred at the door. After a few moments, the officer was able to convince the suspect to come outside. The officer was inquiring whether somebody was injured inside or not. During that conversation, the officer noticed that there was an injury to the suspect's hand, which alerted the officer to the fact that he wanted to inquire further. As he did, it was relayed to the officer from the suspect that a family member regarding an injury had left the area and had possibly received a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At that point, the suspect ran back inside. The officer gave pursuit and tried to detain the suspect. During the struggle, the officer did observe somebody lying on the floor with a significant amount of blood. Based on the officer's experience, it was at that point they determined that person had been deceased. The officer, at that point, lost control of the suspect, and as he exited, the door was closed, tried to make entry again, and then several rounds were fired through the door at the officer. Approximately 7 rounds were fired from what appears to be a .223 caliber rifle. The officer again ran for his life and retreated and called for assistance. The officer and the responding units actually took control of the scene, and to protect the security of the neighborhood and the community, we continued to try and establish communications. There was no consistent way of doing that. We called for numerous agencies to come down and help and assist in this, with the assistance of the Sheriff's Office. The SWAT team, over a period of over 5 hours, continually tried to establish communications, either through voice devices or through motion and hearing devices. Inside, there was no response for a long period of time, and sometime after midnight last night, it was around 12:30, is when the Sheriff's SWAT team made entry and found 2 people deceased inside the residence. As of this point, and the investigation is still ongoing, several weapons were found inside the residence, along with several magazines and shotgun shells all around the residence. There was quite a bit of armory inside. Both people inside suffered gunshot wounds to the head. Last night, between 40 and 60 public safety personnel were here, from fire, AMR, to the Sheriff's Department, the Highway Patrol. We used our cadets, and they're here now using traffic control. We've had American Red Cross. There were people who were displaced for a period of time, and they put them up at a shelter at a local hotel. And so we made those accommodations last night.